All right, let's dive into an absolutely epic story. 1,000 years of Indian history, packed with warring kingdoms, incredible empires, and massive shifts in power that literally shaped the subcontinent we know today. And it all really boils down to one big question.
This is it. This is the heart of our story. We're going to follow this amazing journey from a land that was totally fractured into countless little kingdoms, see it get unified into a powerful empire, and then watch it all unravel as a completely new power waits for its moment to strike.
Think of this timeline as our roadmap. We're starting way back in the 8th century when India was a fractured land, then we'll see the rise of two massive empires. And finally, we'll watch their decline just as a new era is about to begin. So let's get started.
Okay, so picture this. It's early medieval India. A great emperor, Harsha, who had managed to hold a huge chunk of the subcontinent together, is gone. And with him gone, there's nobody strong enough to take his place. That creates a massive power vacuum.
So what you get is this incredible, chaotic patchwork of power. Up in the north, you've got these fierce Rajput clans, like the Chauhans, constantly battling each other for a bigger piece of the pie. Down south, you have these amazing maritime empires, like the Cholas, ruling the seas. But here's the key. With no central authority, no single leader, the entire region was left, well, vulnerable.
And that vulnerability leads us right here, to this moment. You have to remember this year, 1192. It is a massive, massive turning point in Indian history. It's really the end of an old world and the very violent beginning of a new one.
So what happened? It was the Second Battle of Tarain. The famous Rajput king Prithvi Raj Chauhan goes up against an invader, Muhammad Ghori, and is defeated. That single battle completely changes the game. It throws the doors to North India wide open for a whole new type of rule and a brand new center of power.
And that new power was the Delhi Sultanate. For the first time in centuries, a single centralized force shows up with the ambition and the power to actually bring all those squabbling northern kingdoms under one roof.
Now, the Sultanate wasn't some long, stable family affair. Oh no, it was this turbulent, fascinating succession of 5 totally different dynasties over about 300 years. It starts with the Mamluks, or the so-called slave dynasty, and ends with the Lodi dynasty, and each one left its own distinct mark.
You can really see the whole story of the Sultanate right here. It kicks off with the Mamluks building these iconic monuments. Then it gets super ambitious under the Khiljis, who push all the way down into the south. It sees these wild but ultimately failed experiments under the Tughlaqs, and it all leads to the very last Lodi Sultan, who suddenly finds himself staring down a brand new and very dangerous challenger.
Which brings us to our next game-changing date, 1526. Just like 1192 was a huge shift, this year marks the dramatic end of one empire and the explosive beginning of the next one.
This was the first battle of Panipat. And it wasn't just a battle, it was a technological shock. A new invader, Babur, brought gunpowder and cannons to the field. He completely crushed Ibrahim Lodi's huge, but kind of old-school army. And with that one victory, the Delhi Sultanate was gone. In its place, a new dynasty was born, the Mughals.
And that victory kicks off what many people call the Golden Age. The Mughal Empire would become one of the richest, most powerful empires on the planet, known for its incredible architecture and brilliant administration.
So the big question is, how on earth did they hold it all together? Well, a huge part of the answer lies in the genius of the Emperor Akbar. He created something called the Mansabdari system. You can think of it as the administrative glue, or maybe the operating system, for the entire empire. It was a brilliant way to rank every single official, tying them all directly to the emperor and keeping the whole state loyal and organized.
And when you have that kind of stability, you get wealth. Immense wealth, and that money funded some of the most jaw-dropping cultural achievements the world has ever seen. Under Akbar's grandson, Shah Jahan, Mughal architecture hit its absolute peak. You can still see the empire's power and elegance today, immortalized in stone at places like the Taj Mahal and Delhi's Red Fort.
But, as we all know, no empire, no matter how golden, lasts forever. And from that incredible high point, the cracks start to appear. The very foundation of this mighty empire slowly began to break apart from the inside. You can almost tell the entire story of the decline just by looking at the contrast between two emperors. Akbar, who built the empire on a policy of religious tolerance. Then, decades later, his own great-grandson, Aurangzeb, who did a complete 180. His orthodox policies, like bringing back the jizya tax on non-Muslims, and his endless, expensive wars, they pushed away huge parts of the population and totally drained the bank.
So as the center in Delhi gets weaker, what happens? The regions get stronger. Power starts bleeding out from the capital toward all these new challengers. You can see the key players right here, all starting to carve out their own kingdoms, especially the powerful Marathas, but also the Sikhs, the Jats, and even the empire's own governors. The whole thing was fracturing from every direction.
So you've got this chaotic scene, right? A weak empire, strong regional powers fighting for control, and into this power vacuum steps a totally new player, a foreign trading company that just so happens to have its own army and huge ambitions.
And that brings us to our final, fateful date, 1757. If 1526 marked the birth of the Mughal era, you can think of this year as its effective end, and the beginning of a dark, new chapter for India, the colonial age.
The moment it all changed was the Battle of Plassey. This is where the British East India Company, using a lot of bribery and trickery, defeated the local ruler of Bengal. Honestly, as a battle, it wasn't even that big, but its consequences were monumental. This was the win that gave the British their first real foothold, a base from which they would eventually expand to control the entire subcontinent.
Okay, so after this epic story of rise and fall, of empires coming and going, what are we left with? The political empires are gone, sure, but the legacy of this 1,000-year period is, quite literally, all around us today.
If you had to pick one word to define this whole era's legacy, it has to be fusion. This period wasn't just about conflict. It was about this incredible blending of cultures. You see it in the spread of beautiful spiritual movements like Sufism. You see it in the stunning Indo-Islamic architecture. You can even taste it in the food. This era created the rich, complex, blended culture that really defines the subcontinent.
So let's end on this thought. The empires of the Sultans and the Mughals are long gone, but their cultural footprint, that's permanent. It's embedded in the language, the art, the food, the very identity of modern India. So the next time you see a grand old fort or a beautiful monument, think about the 1,000-year story that put it there. What piece of this history do you see in your world?